Do you remember the winter of early 2018? It's a memory that still sends a chill down the spine of many across the UK. That year, the country was gripped by a cold so intense, it felt as if Siberia itself had swept in overnight, transforming familiar streets into icy corridors. The media quickly dubbed it the Beast from the East, a name that captured the ferocity and suddenness of the storm, and soon became part of everyday conversation. Snow didn't just fall in the usual places, it blanketed even the beaches of Cornwall, a sight almost unheard of. Red weather warnings flashed across the country, shutting down schools, halting trains and closing roads, leaving towns and villages eerily quiet. Supermarkets were stripped bare as people rushed to stock up, preparing for days spent indoors, uncertain when the thaw would come. Daytime temperatures barely crept above freezing, and the biting wind chill made it feel even colder. Every breath hung in the air, and people huddled in layers, bracing against the relentless cold. The world outside was transformed. The silence of heavy snow muffled the usual city sounds, and familiar landscapes became unrecognizable under a thick, white blanket. It was more than just weather, it was a national event that brought life to a standstill. The last time the UK had seen anything like it was decades ago, making this storm a once-in-a-generation experience for many. The national grid recorded record gas demand as people tried to keep warm. Farmers worried for their livestock, battling to keep animals safe, while wildlife struggled to survive in the harsh conditions. The Beast was more than a headline. It was a serious meteorological event with real, lasting consequences for society, the economy, and the environment. Emergency services worked around the clock, and communities pulled together to help those in need. Now, as we look back from November 2025, that extraordinary freeze stands as a crucial reference point, a reminder of how quickly nature can upend daily life. What caused such an extreme event? Could it happen again? Scientists and meteorologists continue to study the Beast from the East, searching for answers and preparing for the possibility of another deep freeze in the future. Polar vortex sounds dramatic, almost like something out of a science fiction movie, conjuring images of swirling storms and icy blasts. But in reality, it's a genuine and crucial part of how our planet's atmosphere works, playing a key role in shaping winter weather across the globe. The polar vortex is essentially a massive pool of intensely cold air, spinning high above both the north and south poles. It's held in place by a powerful current of fast-moving air called the polar night jet stream, which acts as a kind of invisible barrier. This jet stream works like a fence, circling the pole and keeping the coldest air locked away in the Arctic, far from more temperate regions. Each winter, as the polar region is plunged into months of darkness and temperatures drop to extreme lows, the vortex strengthens and becomes more pronounced. When the jet stream remains strong and stable, the frigid air stays trapped up north, and places like the UK experience their usual, mild, damp winters, with little more than chilly rain and overcast skies. However, the jet stream isn't always steady. Sometimes, it weakens or becomes wavy. Imagine the fence starting to wobble and bend. When this happens, the polar vortex itself can stretch, split into pieces, or even break apart entirely, sending fragments of cold air southward. This allows pockets of Arctic air to escape their polar home and surge down into lower latitudes, bringing sudden and severe cold snaps. It's a bit like leaving your freezer door wide open. The icy air spills out and chills everything in its path, far beyond where it's supposed to stay. These escaped blasts of polar air are what cause the extreme cold waves and blizzards that can grip Europe and North America, sometimes with little warning. So, when you hear news reports about the polar vortex, it usually means this system has been disrupted, not that it's simply sitting overhead. The real story is about the escaped pocket of polar air, like the infamous Beast from the East that blanketed the UK in snow and ice, catching many by surprise. That's why meteorologists keep a close eye on the polar vortex's stability every winter, using satellites and computer models to track its every move. The behavior of the polar vortex can mean the difference between a typical, uneventful winter and a historic freeze that makes headlines and disrupts daily life for millions. The 2018 Beast from the East began high above us, in the stratosphere. In February, a sudden stratospheric warming, SSW, event occurred. Temperatures in the stratosphere over the Arctic soared by up to 50 degrees in days. This warming, caused by powerful atmospheric waves, disrupts the polar night jet stream. The jet stream can slow, stop, or even reverse, knocking the polar vortex off balance. In 2018, the SSW was so strong it split the vortex apart. The cold air, usually trapped over the pole, spilled south. There's a lag, about 2 weeks, before these changes reach the surface. Meteorologists saw the SSW and knew severe consequences were coming. Westerly winds gave way to frigid easterlies from Siberia. That's why it was called the Beast from the East. It was a textbook chain reaction, SSW, disrupted vortex, Arctic air unleashed. The result, a historic cold snap across Europe. After the sudden stratospheric warming, or SSW, shattered the polar vortex high above the Arctic, a dramatic chain reaction began to unfold in the atmosphere. The stage was set for a mass of frigid Arctic air to surge southward, poised to invade much of Europe. A powerful blocking high-pressure system soon formed over Scandinavia, acting like a giant atmospheric wall. This high-pressure block diverted the usual mild westerly winds that typically bring warmth and moisture from the Atlantic. The Atlantic's milder air was effectively cut off from reaching the UK, leaving the country exposed. Instead, icy winds began to sweep in from the east and northeast, a direction notorious for bringing cold spells. This air mass originated over the vast frozen expanses of Siberia, traveling thousands of kilometers across snow-covered land, which kept it intensely cold and dry. By the time this relentless cold air finally reached the UK, it was still deep freeze cold, with temperatures plunging well below average for late February. As the Siberian air crossed the chilly waters of the North Sea, it picked up extra moisture from the sea's surface, priming it for snowfall. The result? Persistent, heavy snow showers battered the UK for days, especially in eastern Britain and Scotland, where the cold, moisture-laden air first made landfall. This phenomenon is known as sea effect snow, similar to the famous lake effect snow seen in North America. The domino effect was complete. A rare sequence of meteorological events had lined up perfectly. A stratospheric warming event triggered a blocking pattern in the atmosphere, steering frigid Siberian air across the North Sea and straight into the heart of the UK, where it dumped heavy snow and brought widespread disruption. The infamous Beast from the East was a direct delivery of Arctic winter, living up to its dramatic name. It was a rare, perfect setup for a national freeze, with snow and ice gripping the country from city streets to rural hills. The UK was transformed almost overnight, as familiar landscapes vanished beneath a blanket of snow, and the nation braced for a true Arctic blast. As autumn 2025 ends, meteorologists are searching for clues about the coming winter. Long-range forecasts focus on the polar vortex. Is it strong and stable, or showing signs of weakness? Computer models analyze sea temperatures, Arctic ice, and atmospheric pressure. Weak stratospheric winds early in the season can signal a higher risk of SSW events. The quasi-biennial oscillation, QBO, a regular wind reversal high in the stratosphere, also plays a role. An easterly QBO phase can weaken the vortex, making SSW more likely. By combining these factors, forecasters estimate the odds of a major cold event, but certainty is elusive. So, what are experts saying about winter 2025? Early signals are mixed, but some models hint at a weaker-than-average polar vortex. That raises the risk of a midwinter SSW event. Dr. Elena Petrova notes unusual sea temperature patterns in the North Atlantic, which could favor a blocking high over Scandinavia. But nothing is guaranteed. The atmosphere is chaotic. Professor Mark Davies cautions, not every SSW leads to a UK freeze. It depends where high pressure sets up. The scientific consensus: the risk of a significant cold event is higher than average, but it's too soon to be certain. Forecasters are watching the stratosphere closely as the new year approaches. If an SSW occurs, it will be the clearest warning to brace for a freeze. If 2018 repeats, the UK faces major disruption. Heavy snow and strong winds could paralyze transport, blocked roads, cancelled trains, grounded flights. The economy would suffer, supply chains break, businesses close, and productivity drops. Energy demand would soar, straining the national grid. The human cost is real. The elderly and vulnerable at risk, health services under pressure, and emergency crews stretched thin. Mental health would suffer as people are isolated indoors. Wildlife and farmers would struggle. Birds can't find food, livestock need protection, and crops risk frost damage. A repeat of the beast from the east would be a national crisis, testing our resilience. It's not just a weather story. It's a challenge for society. Preparation and community support would be vital. With a severe cold spell possible, preparation is key, not panic, but practical steps. National agencies are reviewing plans, salt stocks, energy grid management, and emergency coordination. Lessons from 2018 matter, like ensuring snowplows can reach stranded drivers. At home, check your boiler, insulate pipes, and know how to turn off your water. Stock up gradually on essentials, long-life food, water, medications, and a torch. Charge your phone and power banks if severe weather is forecast. Check on vulnerable neighbors. A simple gesture can make a big difference. Prepare for travel disruption. Check forecasts, winterize your car, and carry a kit with blankets, food, and a charged phone. Sensible preparation can turn a crisis into a manageable inconvenience. If the beast from the east returns, readiness will help us weather the storm. If the planet is warming, why do we still get extreme cold snaps? The answer may lie in the rapidly warming Arctic, which is changing global weather patterns. Arctic amplification, warming twice as fast as the global average, weakens the jet stream that contains the polar vortex. A weaker, wavier jet stream is more likely to let Arctic air escape south, causing severe cold events. Some scientists argue that climate change is making the polar vortex less stable, increasing the risk of events like the beast from the east. Others say these cold spells are part of natural variability. Untangling climate change from natural weather is a huge scientific challenge. As we await winter 2025, we're left to wonder, is the beast from the east a fluke or a sign of winters to come?